Hello, everyone. My name is John Rafuse. I'm the agent for the world's most famous hacker, Kevin Mitnick. Cybersecurity started with Kevin's case. He was the inaugural speaker here 4 years ago. I was drawn to this by Andrew and his crew because I do security events all over the world. I just got back from Saudi Arabia. The investments that are going on around the world in cybersecurity are just fantastic. In Saudi, they had 32,000 students apply for 100 positions. Think of that difference between here and there, where we're trying to beg our students to get into that. So China, conferences of 10,000 students, each one of them, all about hacking, right? The infrastructure and investing into the human capital and capacity in North America is way behind. Okay? We've got a great panel today. Now, these people didn't pay money to get here. They were, I guess it's the word, victimized or sponsored by the families that run this event. It's a very close-knit family that runs these events, and they volunteered their time to be here. They are not in the money aspect of investing. These are people that make the calls on big companies regarding their spends, regarding their futures, and I want you to be able to dig into them, because who's seen the movie Jerry Maguire? Just so you know, I use that as like, you see Jerry Maguire, you show me the money, you know? So when if somebody's droning on about something, just shout out, show me the money, just get through the bullshit, right? Just get right to what you want to know about. And in this panel format, I'm keeping it fairly open. It's called the wish list. So we're letting them say 3 wishes each. And these wishes can be, I wish I'd spent the money here when I did it, or I wish I hadn't spent the money here, or to give advice to people that, you know, where it isn't going, or I wish they would invent something like this to solve this cybersecurity problem, right? What are these wishes involved? And, you know, 3 wishes, 3 guys, it'll take a little bit of time, but then I want you to tell us what your wish is or why you're here at this event, right? What you're looking for, because this is a very unique event, and I actually sponsor it, and this is the only event I actually go to on a regular basis in cybersecurity, because financial side of things it's the bloodline for our industry. So without further ado, I'll just allow people to introduce themselves, and then we'll start with their first wishes. We do that, okay?
John Whiting, DDB Worldwide.
Sure. And do you want to just tell a bit about your company, your role, and then tell
I'm the global CISO. DDB Worldwide is an advertising and marketing holding company.
Right. And in terms of cybersecurity, what's your first wish?
Wish I hadn't done, or wish for the future?
Pick whatever you want. You can mix it up if you like.
Well, if I take the last 10 years and 3 different roles that I had, I would say endpoint security. Wasted a lot of money on traditional antivirus, and sometimes I was forced into those positions by finance and procurement because they know the big names. They don't want the new players, and nothing really works together. It's too much noise, and then Day Zero came out, EDR, and I wanted to go with some of the newer technologies, and I was forced because they didn't have a Gartner report, or finance didn't recognize them.
Not all the trimmings that you would see, right?
Exactly, or either just who their channel didn't support them. Yeah.
All right. Well, you wish you'd done that differently. Vic.
Hi everyone, my name is Vic Arora. I'm the CISO for Hospital for Special Surgery. We're the #1 orthopedics and rheumatology hospital located in the Upper East Side. Prior to that, I was in a similar role at New York City Health and Hospitals, which is the largest public healthcare in US. Something I wish was in place. So right now, the #1 attack vector for all breaches, as most of you know, is phishing. So I really hope at some point in the past, people had implemented DMAR and SPF into the email. That would have single-handedly and very simply prevented a lot of phishing problems and also reputational problems. So emails from companies like Apple, PayPal, or HSS would have been easier to detect. So I think that would be my #1 thing. I hope it was in place.
Okay. David?
Yes, my name is David Roth. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of the Ford Foundation. We are an independent foundation headquartered in New York with an endowment of about $13 billion, originally from the Ford Foundation, from the Ford family. And we give away about $500 million a year to organizations around the world who are fighting inequality and fighting for social justice. I guess my number one wish would be that the global nonprofits that are around the world would be better equipped to address cybersecurity threats that are facing them. They are under attack on a daily basis, but unfortunately they are underfunded. They are understaffed. They cannot get the attention of their executive directors on issues as mundane as cybersecurity. And they're vulnerable right now. And it's a huge challenge for them.
Does everybody know that nonprofits are being targeted more than profit companies? You know that? I see that all the time. We have nonprofits coming to us all the time trying to get the security awareness raised up because people are very trusting in those organizations. They're very helpful, and trust and help tends people to click on things. Oh, I'm going to send you a little email. Click on this, and it'll describe what we're trying to do, and people click on it. Right? Phishing. Back to you. Wish number 2.
Wish number 2, I wish there was more collaboration between vendors and the way that they identify stuff. We were in a room earlier, I was talking about Sticks and Taxi, which the attacker groups were trying to put together in like a common threat framework. I'm tired of too many alerts and too many different ways of looking at it. And the SIMs don't really help me. I mean, by the time I get to the SIM and something is reactive, it's really too late.
Can you tell the people what SIMS is? Can you tell them what that is?
SIM?
Yeah.
Security Event Management?
Right, but these people are financial. Remember, you guys, right, you're security guys, and these guys don't know.
Yeah, it's
Right, is that what that means?
It's
Maybe?
correlating the logs, taking all of the logs in, and part of the problem is I worked at all enterprises, they're not greenfields, so stuff is not tagged appropriately, you don't know what it is. When the SIM gets it, it just looks at stuff. You don't know what's really the critical stuff and what's not the really critical stuff, but if you have a SOC, SIM is number 1 on your checklist.
So you wish for a better collaboration tool or platform amongst the industry?
Yeah, on alerting before it even gets to the SIM. So if I have 3 different things on the endpoint, I'm looking at, especially on the ransomware or the 0-day, 3 different tools are telling me 3 different things.
Got it? So there's investment opportunity there. Vic?
So I'm currently invested in a multi-year program to put an identity and access management program for the hospital in place. And I really think there is room for improvement, both from an identity management, because we need to expand the scope of identities from beyond our employees and contractors. We're bringing our patients into the mix. There's a lot of intelligence that companies like Amazon and Walmart are doing that if you bought this, you want to buy this. And some of those concepts are translating to healthcare, to do predictive diagnosis, to tell patients when to see the doctors. So their identities become as important as the identity of my employees. So the identity and access management systems hopefully kind of can handle both, which is a huge challenge. We have like 6,000 employees and over 1 million patients. And the access management piece, I'm also hoping it's long overdue because I strongly feel that passwords have reached their end of life, and that happened a few years ago. There has been a Band-Aid shot at it using the multi-factor authentication, and that has holes. So I'm really hoping that something around the lines of that is zero friction, behavioral authentication becomes mainstream. So identity and access management is something that I'm really hoping we can solve in the next few months.
Passwords are dead, passphrases are in. Choose a passphrase of your favorite lyric or whatever, add a couple digits, but do not go with passwords anymore.
My second wish would be that software patching would be much easier to do. I mean, if you think about it, any user in your organization might have anywhere from 15 to 20 different applications running. Some of these products are filled with security holes, and the vendors are continually coming out with updates. But it's incumbent upon either the individual or somebody in the IT department to apply those patches. And unfortunately, there are environments that are months or years behind in patching. So it's 2 things. It's one, having the technology and the products to make it easier to patch, to understand what's been, what's vulnerable, what hasn't been patched, and then make it easy for IT to patch those on a consistent and frequent basis so that you've plugged the holes that hackers can typically exploit.
And there are tools that do that, but it seems like he doesn't see that being pushed to him enough or something of quality, right? So
There are tools that do that, but there's also tons of appliances out there that have their own stack on it that are not patched, like phone systems. And
Right.
just got an email today, I think it was from Italy. We found something, they said, oh, it's a hard drive and it has Linux on it, but there's no patch for it, so now I got to put a wrapper around it, so.
Now, we'll just stop at the questions or the wishes that you heard. Is there any questions about that or anything? And just so you know, when you stand up, you have to say why you're at this conference. No, just kidding. Or you'd have to show me the money. Come on, you guys, it's the end of the day. Let's go. Any questions? Go ahead.
So my name is Zohar. I'm a cyber investor from Israel.
Right?
So when you say identity management, can you elaborate a little more? Because there are tons of identity management products out there, platforms, products, niche solutions. So what's really still missing?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So I think what's missing is the validation of an identity. I'll give you an example that we struggle with on a day-to-day basis. So usually we have physicians who would fly in from different parts of the world because of the nature of the case, or you have to partner with physicians across the state who's normally not part of your ecosystem. So the request comes to IT and they want to be provisioned. At this point, it's a very simple process of username and password in Active Directory. But then there are attributes that that person needs to have, such as licensing, certification, experience, what have you. Those are maintained or handled by a specific department within the hospital for the physicians who are part of the hospital. But for an outside physician, we'll have to partner with somebody who does that for that physician. And that does not, those attributes, so that richness and identity is not enough for us to make a security decision. So that's just one example. And it just becomes more and more tricky as the stakeholders increase. Vendors are a good example. So when they change subcontractors or consultants who are serving the hospital, the communications is not very clean. You may have let go of a vendor, but he may still have credentials because he was provisioned in Active Directory, because we all know that deprovisioning does not happen in a timely manner. So that poses a risk. So when I say identity and access management, I'm hoping that that problem can be solved by some risk-based decisions that the system can make.
I think that, that happens outside the hospitals. At any vertical, you have HR doing full-time staff, and you may have procurement doing augmented staff.
Right.
It's really a people problem. They have to take ownership of those roles, onboarded them, offboarded them correctly. I don't really think you can throw a solution at that.
Did that answer your question?
Partly, yeah. I think that if you go to risk-based decisions, based on my experience, most organizations are finding it difficult to adopt such solutions because at the end of the day, nobody wants to sign on the system deciding that this person is riskier or not. So it's nice in theory, but at the end of the day, it's very difficult to say something like that.
Yeah, so a few years ago, Verizon had started, or maybe another ISP had started a process of identity verification. And then some other ISPs jumped on the bandwagon, and it never really took off. They had 4 levels. On paper, it seemed great because they had 4 levels of assurances depending on the money you would give them. They could do a background check. They could have like a notary provide an affidavit of somebody's identity. And then they had like security clearance-based validation that could happen through public sources. So something like that, if it can be operationalized, would be extremely helpful.
Do you see that as a government-based system for identity management?
I don't think it can be a government-based system, given the amount of effort and innovation that's needed. It would start off in the private sector, and then there might be regulations that get thrown on it. But with the advent of blockchain and the capability to share identities on a need-to-know basis without disclosing everything, That's where I see the potential. So a combination of a blockchain and identity and access management solution can probably come together.
John, you've got a lot of knowledge in blockchain. Where do you see blockchain at with the security industry right now?
Well, that was just from my private investment in blockchain, but I only really see it, I don't know about security, because security is not really transactional. I see it in transactional businesses, but
People are spinning blockchain into security all day long right now. Just
doing
like
what
they're-
though?
they're
What,
block-
for what real use?
Yeah, I'm asking you, is there
Yeah.
any use for it?
I don't see any use for it.
Who's investing in blockchain and cybersecurity? Oh, no hands are raised there. So, yeah, so you don't see any use?
I don't.
All right.
So there's one thing that we are looking at is, so currently there's a huge problem. In spite of all the digital innovations, if you go to a doctor and you have your records and then he refers you to a specialist and you make appointment, the only way for you to get your records from your primary to a physician is what? Fax. In spite of all the investments we have made in telemedicine and Zoom and Epics of the world, it's still fax. So with blockchain, there are a few startups that can allow you to download your data because there is standardization, HL7, and there are other formats. So everybody has a patient portal that was required as part of meaningful use, another Obama-era regulation, which made sure that people can access their medical records electronically. So you get a portal from your physician or hospital, you can download that record in a very industry standard format. There are consumer-grade applications that allow you to consume it and then share it with a new physician. And it can all happen through blockchain, but there's no centralized, the discussion gets into a centralized blockchain versus a decentralized, and that's where I think a partnership can help.
Okay, is there another question before the next wishes? Hands? Oh, in the back.
I was just wondering if there's any.
Sorry, who are you and what are you looking for?
Hi, I'm Jamie. I'm from Slack,
Oh, Slack. Well, there you
just
go.
hanging out here. I was wondering if there's any incidents that happened in your career that kind of left an impact on how you think about cybersecurity. I'm kind of basically looking for like interesting war stories, if you have.
John
any.
has a great one over here. Please, John. Or sorry,
Dave.
David. John, you.
Yeah, I actually had been at the Ford Foundation for about 5 months, and I got a call from the FBI one day. And he was very circumspect, but he said he had suspicions to believe that we had been hacked by a foreign state. He wouldn't go into any more details than that. But we did a little bit more research and met with the FBI the next week and learned that indeed the Chinese government had been in our network for over a year without our knowledge. I told my boss this, and he said, oh, I'm not surprised at all. I was waiting for that phone call. It's because 3 or 4 other foundations had been hit by the Chinese government as well. So, that incident has basically had a huge impact on my last 6 years at the foundation, because we were a very non-security conscious organization. And we have become very security conscious. The Chinese were in our network, not to go after the $13 billion endowment. That was never touched. They were in it solely for political knowledge. They wanted to know who specifically in China we were talking to, so that they could extend their network of information. They went to the point of even having loggers installed on some of our workstations in our Beijing office.
Absolutely.
So it has had a tremendous impact on my career and on the direction of the foundation's IT spend.
Slack's going to be a huge target around the world because you're all the communications of a lot of companies. So I don't know where your testing's at, but you'll probably have to almost open that up for global trust. So it's a tall hill, but you'll climb it.
There's another question right there.
Oh, sorry. Question over there?
Hi, Sivan from Perimeter 81.
Say it a little louder, please.
Sivan from Perimeter 81. I wonder if you, as CISOs, think that one day you would be able to consume cybersecurity network as a service and replace the traditional network in your organization with a SaaS solution or a software-defined solution.
Let me rephrase a little bit. Outsourcing your cybersecurity as a subscription-based service from cradle to grave, maybe because a lot of companies want to just concentrate on the business. Would you like to see it? Now, I know.
Well, she was talking about outsourcing the network. Most of my security services are outsourced.
As a subscription?
They're outsourced to third parties
Yeah.
because it's repeatable tasks.
Right.
So,
That's the same with you, David?
Yeah, very definitely. I have one security person within my IT department, and he couldn't do it alone. We have outsourced our log analysis, log collection analysis, incident response. It's all outsourced. And he is providing overall direction to the outsourced team that's working 24/7, making sure we stay safe.
Vic is got a quite good cachet for insourcing. He's quite a big advocate and been very successful for insourcing. Do you insource your cybersecurity as well?
No, I'm also, so the model we have is that any level 1, level 2 task for any security service, whether it's vulnerability management, monitoring, IR, patch management, it's all outsourced. It's managed service. And only where I need a level 3 or an escalation or people who need to develop security for newer frontiers, such as cloud or Internet of Things, I'm trying to hire those type of people. But in general, mostly operational activities, level 1, level 2, looking to outsource. There's a small caveat there, and in the past, I've done a lot of insourcing. We developed a security operations center at my last job. It took us 5 years. We deployed ArcSight, hired a bunch of people, and it was really a heavy lift. I needed 2 people just as administrators of the tool, let alone other staff members to figure out what to do with the data. And that just, you have to do a cost-benefit analysis. The quality of logging and alerting was much better than what I currently get from my outsourced managed service provider, but my investment is also 70-80% less. You have to figure out what really matters and if the dollars are worth the extra value.
That's an interesting metric. Did that answer your question? Oh.
Say you get hacked. Who is your first outside third party that you contact? Is it counsel? Is it insurance? Is it a cyber solution provider or other?
Or PR?
Sure.
First is the executives.
Or the authorities.
Never the authorities first, the executives and then general counsel. Because
Who's the first outside party?
that will be the direction of the general counsel. It wouldn't be my direction. I'm not going to take the fall if something goes wrong. Like he said, we own PR companies. They want to get the story straight before it gets out.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a crisis management team that comprises of our legal and CFO and everybody who needs to make a decision. That's the first group of people that would get notified, and then there will be a consensus reached among them, whether it's something that the general counsel needs to be involved or we need to get somebody who we have on retainer. So it depends on situation to situation. Really depends. But the management needs to get notified right away, and it's a formal crisis management team.
It has to happen very quickly, though, because, you have to contact the FBI right away. If some major money transfer is going on, they might be able to stop it, right? So the clock definitely ticks to try and stop it. They're not always in the network for a year.
Yeah.
You might have just found out about it, the transfer's going on or whatever is going on, and you need to be right on it.
Usually, the incidents I've been involved in the past 2 years haven't been as sexy or as interesting as what he described, my friend. It's usually around privileged misuse, people losing devices, unauthorized transfers. It's really miscellaneous errors or insiders not doing the right thing. That's 70-80% of the incidents. And very rarely I would have like a nation state or other type of things. And that's when you would reach out to FBI because we don't have material harm yet, but we're reaching out to FBI and others to see, hey, is it widespread or are we just the unlucky ones?
Okay, there's one in the back here. And then we'll take this one and go to the next set of wishes. Do it loud or wait for the mic. Name and calling.
Hi, I'm John with Data Tribe. We're a seed stage investor. So just, and Vikram, you got into this just a little bit, but I was wondering if you guys could expand a little on how you measure, quantify your cost benefit in making investments as you build up your budget, and kind of bring us into the room of when you're discussing that with your C-suite and board. Like how does that conversation go?
Yeah, so that's a very good question. That's part of the reason I'm here, because I'm trying to follow the money and nobody's more interested in ROI than VCs, so I'm trying to figure out how you do it. But with the conversation that happens, so I report to the audit committee, which is a section of the subcommittee of the board on a quarterly basis, and we have a defined format. It took me a bunch of years to figure out what the right messaging is, and it's rarely around return on investment. It's the first thing that gets presented on every audit committee is what are our top risks, and what are the threat vectors that are targeting those, and what are the controls that we have in place to lower that risk to an acceptable level. We try to put the onus back on the board and senior management to define what that acceptable level is. And that's how we try to justify the investments, because if we are, let's say, at a medium in the biomedical devices, are we okay there? It's like driving a car. You want to be at 70 miles an hour because you have a sick kid at the back, you won't care about a ticket. But if that's not the case, you should follow the speed limit. So once that acceptable limit is defined, and then we have an outside agency do a risk assessment, and they put high, medium, or low severities on various categories, that's when we go back and say, hey, we need money to bring this risk here. And then the challenge is, we try to, when we make an investment in a technology, we want to be able to quantifiably say that it has reduced the risk. And phishing is a perfect example. I mean, it's a known problem. You can throw as many dollars as you want at it, but at some point, enough is going to be enough. So those are the calculations, and it's part of an information security steering group. It's a governance group, and we have a mantra that's called proper protection at proper price, and that's where we say, okay, is this enough or not?
For
So
me,
that's
it's a little bit different. I report to the CIO that reports to the global CFO, and since we're a holding company, I can't really buy anything CapEx. I really have to do a dance to buy something CapEx. It's all OpEx, and sometimes they don't care about the money. The question I get back is, what problem is this going to solve? And are you going to be able to complete this in this year's budget? That's more of the challenge I have, because they care about the write-offs at the same time as I'm actually trying to implement a project. How are you going to do this globally? And tell me how you're going to accomplish this and what it's going to accomplish, and we'll grant you the money.
And one question that pretty much every board member has asked me in the past 10 years is, what is everybody else doing? Because at some point they stop understanding what you're telling them. It's very important that you have a relationship where they trust you, because not every time they will understand it. That's hugely important. 90% of my conversations happen outside the boardroom, so that the boardroom 15-minute I get are more meaningful. But they would always ask, what is everybody else doing? And I always ask my vendors, hey, can you provide like a managed security service provider? So we are a healthcare vertical. You have 100 other verticals. Can you tell me how do we compare with them? And that's a good idea. Okay, you have like 13 billion logs. You generate 700 incidents a month, out of which 5 are severe. Is it too good? Are you detecting enough? Or how does it compare with the 10 other hospitals you have? And those are the metrics that the board finds extremely helpful when it comes to return on investment.
I guess I would say that I'm been in a fortunate situation that I've never been asked to justify a particular expenditure on security infrastructure to anybody. I guess I have the trust of my boss, who's the COO. But the only time the board has gotten involved is to answer the same question you just referenced. How good are you doing versus everyone else? You know, it sounds like you're doing a great job. You haven't had any successful breaches. You passed your last year's audit very well. But how's everybody else doing? And what might it take in terms of an investment to get to the NIST standard or an ISO compliance standard? That's what they wanted to know. And I was able to provide that relatively easily. and they seem happy that we're leading edge within foundations.
Okay, so, John, next, third wish. Rubbing that lamp.
I guess my third wish is what I should have done like years back, and it's nothing about DLP solutions. They just didn't work very well for me, but I still see a need for some type of discovery of data because, the number one problem I have as a CISO is the users classifying, identifying, and tagging it so I can do something with it. I really wish there was a product out there that can kind of read and see what the user is doing and how they're doing it and say, does this fit this type of category? And automatically flag it and have the user, if they don't come back and not readjust it, that it's at that, because I have sensitive data that's moving around that I don't even know that's sensitive. I work for an ad agency, everyone's autonomous, I'm stopping stuff from going different places on the web, but they're always looking at new ways to hide it from me.
So the users can be a problem.
Users is my number one problem.
No.
Like he said, there's always, we do so many wire transfers a day, I can't tell you that, there's been 8-figure man-in-the-middle attacks that money went to the wrong place.
Absolutely.
It is human error. It's either on a partner or someone in finance changed the bank account but didn't pick up the phone to call.
In the penetration testing that Kevin does, he can spoof cell phones, so it looks like your boss is phoning you. You can now do the deep fake stuff, so you can imitate your voice, we can puppeteer you on video until you see them in the flesh. We've entered the age of the misinformation. That was about a year ago. We are now in the age of misinformation, so trusting information even to get that information. So how do you verify the information that you get from your users? Do you have to, I guess it's your wish.
I mean, it's their responsibility, They're the owner of the data, they need to classify the data. I can't get in the middle of that and start making decisions. It's like the same thing with a business. They manage the risk. I bring it to your attention, and either you accept it or we're going to remediate it. I don't get involved in that. That's not my job.
Or any of your companies or any investors that have a seed company like that, tell them about it. Beck?
Yeah, so I think my wish is a little related to what John said. I do agree with him that the data is going to grow feet and legs and going to run away. And I'm hoping that another failed venture has been information rights management. Microsoft had it, digital rights management. It's a very promising technology. I fail to understand why it hasn't taken off. Maybe it's too much friction for the users. But I'm operating with the assumption that no matter how much security I put in, the data is definitely going to end up on an unmanaged asset or with an untrusted vendor. So if there is security that's baked into the documents themselves, like a rights management, where again there are dynamic decisions that are being based either on time, location, or environment, or other attributes, it can revoke access or alert the right people. That would really be very helpful. And I think with machine learning, it is possible. I mean, AI has been around for a while. It didn't take off because we didn't have computational capabilities, we didn't have data lakes, and now those things are making or reviving AI, and it's a buzzword. But I still think where we have a lot of data and past information, there could be a solution there where we have information rights management more effectively applied.
David?
I would, as my third wish, I would echo the concerns that I think I've heard the other panelists say is, the weakest link in my entire security infrastructure are my users. We do countless phishing tests and send people to remediation testing, remediation training classes when they open up a suspicious email, but it never fails. We are continually getting, breaches caused by people opening up an email and clicking on a link, and we've had some people, enter their credentials, their network credentials onto sites. I just wish we could somehow stop people from clicking on those links.
Just to add, and going back to the earlier thing I mentioned, I think everybody, it should be mandatory. We should not be a security practitioners if you're not pushing for DMARC and SPF. The free tools that are available, it does require some configurations, but it does give you the capability so that your emails are trusted.
You're absolutely right. The problem I have, I've been here 4 years. We're advertising, we own thousands of domains. Some of the IT organizations are lazy because it takes a lot of footwork. And then we start getting so many exceptions to that. Oh, we need this marketing list, that marketing list, It's the pushback of the overhead. But it works. It definitely does work.
Before we go on, I just wanted to do another little thing with David. David, your foundation invests in inequality.
Yes.
Just tell a little bit about what your foundation's doing, because you're volunteering your time here, so just tell us a little bit what you're looking for, because a lot of these people have money that could donate into the foundation.
Actually, we don't take donations.
No?
No, it's, we fund our grants solely out of our endowment. That was a gift from Edsel and Henry Ford. So, sorry you can't give to us.
But it's very noble what they're doing, because, if you know the Ford history, Ford, part of his, well, you could call it his sales pitch, but it's also his vision was to make a car that everybody could afford, not just the rich, right? Fighting inequality through the automation, manufacturing, right? So that permeates down into your foundation.
Yes, it's a very it's a foundation filled with very passionate, dedicated people interested in solving some of the world's greatest problems.
It sounds like you could give them some investment advice for self-funded. Okay, that's great. So let's stop another round of questions. We're just closing out of time here, but a few questions. One in the back.
Just a kind of, John made a wish, and I want to say that, so John, you made the wish, and I've got to say that there is a technology out there that provides what your wishes are asking for. I'm CEO of OneTouch.io, backed by JVP and Israel Innovation Authority, and we do exactly what you are asking. We look at data flows in the network. We see where personal or protected data is going, how it's being stored and processed, and how it's being shared outside the organization. So shameless pitch there, but your wishes come true.
We get your business card, okay.
This is what it's about, connecting, right? Other questions? Well, I'll tell you why I'm here. Oh, I'm here looking to rebrand.
Oh, you got another question.
You got another question right there?
Wait, hold on 1 second.
So I was actually surprised by the depth of how much you outsource your security operations. So my question is, who and how makes the decision of which product to buy, which practice to deploy? Is it you and then you force the managed security provider to act on it, or do they offer you what to do?
Some of them are managed security providers, and some of them are actually the vendors. So when it comes to like spam, Proofpoint is large enough where I go to anyone else but Proofpoint to manage it. I mean, we can put rules in, we can do stuff, but they look at it. When it goes to like the MSPs for our SOC, AT&T was here earlier. We use AT&T, so we're transitioning from ArcSight to their new acquisition. They handle that for us. But I have a separate SOC 3 team that does forensics, that does advanced investigations for us, but they work off of what I tell them to work on. In terms of like technologies like firewalls and stuff like that, that comes to be like a corporate standard. So whoever runs it. Is it Palo Alto's, if it's Fortinet, if it's Cisco, doesn't really make a difference to me.
Any other questions?
What's your plug, John?
What's my plug? Okay. So Kevin was the inaugural speaker here. In the spring, that October, that was 4 years ago, Goldman Sachs, if you're out there, thanks, put $30 million into it. Now they just got evaluated. This is KnowBe4. Kevin did the endorsement for KnowBe4 on the Kevin Mitnick Security Awareness Training. Humans are the weakest link. You can't download a patch for stupid. So you have to teach these people what not to do. Phishing is not only just in emails. But I'm looking for other companies that a lot of you are investors, have portfolios. You have great products, but you don't have a great brand. I can cut down your sales growth by 10 to 15 years by rebranding with Kevin, as long as it's tested through Kevin. It's a very rigorous process. But that's what I'm looking for, because I want to grow somebody else up. And that's KnowBe4 is now number 2 of the Cybersecurity 500. We can do the same thing for you. Kevin's known all over the world. Stop by my booth. Oh, and I'll give you this is the most famous business card in the world. If you didn't get one of these, if you've been here before, people stand in line for hours to get this. It's a lockpick. And so you can open up the door anywhere. Well, that's basically it, folks. Thank you very much for the volunteers here. They didn't have to be here, but they're here. And